Good morning, class. My name is Emma Rose Hanley. I'm a future art education instructor, and I'm very excited to present to you today my lesson plan for learning the elements of art and learning charcoal. So this lesson is an interdisciplinary as well as interactive lesson that satisfies North Carolina Common Core standards for art for beginning artists in high school, so grade 9 through 12. It satisfies requirements B.B.1, B.B.3, and B.CR.1, and those requirements outline a need of understanding how to discuss art, how to describe art, how to critique art, and an introduction of a new material today, which will be charcoal. So I'm very excited to get into it. This is part one of the lesson. I will go throughout this video. I will go through each activity and explain them more in depth, and then I'll do a quick demo with charcoal that is not meant to replace an in-class demo. In-class demos are always the best for art classes, but it's more meant to be supplementary, a place where students can refer back to if needed, and an outline of points that definitely do need to be in an in-class demo. So without further ado, let's get started. Before I get started, I want to ask my higher thinking questions. So before watching any more of this video, I'd like to break and ask the higher thinking question of what is charcoal and what can you make with charcoal? So I'll be answering those questions throughout the video. It's always best to get people to answer those before the video and then see if their answers match up to the ones I'll provide. Other higher thinking questions that can be answered after the video is how is charcoal different from graphite? What's the best technique for holding charcoal? And what is the difference between compressed charcoal and vine or willow charcoal, which is uncompressed? So we'll get into answering all those questions in a few, but before we get into charcoal, I want to explain the other parts of the lesson. So this is activity 1, this video demo, and it comes with teacher notes. Part 2 is the interactive presentation explaining the elements of art. It is an interactive presentation using Nearpod in which students have a place that they can enter in their own answers for prompted questions. This can be done as a class, in groups, or individually. Part 3 is a sketchbook assignment where students will have a page per element of art or a couple pages per element of art, up to the teacher's discretion. And it's just a place for them to practice making, using the elements of art and using charcoal. And the last activity is the charcoal project, which will be done on a big sheet of paper like this, as big as available. The ideal is 18 by 24. That's kind of the standard size for higher art education projects, especially with drawings. So it can seem a little big at first, but you get used to it very quick, and I definitely feel it's important to introduce students to working big as early as possible, so it's not daunting later on. So without further ado, let's get into charcoal. So again, I want to go over those higher thinking questions. What is charcoal and what can you make with charcoal? Questions for after the video: how is it different from graphite? What's the best way to hold it? And what's the difference between compressed charcoal and uncompressed charcoal? So, charcoal. Charcoal is exactly what you think it is. It's the same thing in a fire that you get after burning a campfire, the little pieces of burnt wood at the bottom. So charcoal is burnt material, most of the time wood. It can come in all different kinds. I have all of these kinds to show you all today. It can come in circular shapes like these ones. It can come in squares. This is obviously not a perfect rectangle because it's been used, but when it comes, it looks a lot like this. And there's lots of different kinds of charcoal, but what you usually make with charcoal is drawings. They're great for quick gestural drawings, they're great for planning bigger drawings, and they're great for adding lots of dark value to your drawings in ways that graphite can't, which brings me to my next answer. What is the difference between charcoal and graphite? Charcoal is obviously burnt material, whereas graphite is found. And graphite is definitely tones of gray. You will not get black with graphite, whereas charcoal, this is how dark you can go. You know, it's definitely black, and the more you blend it out, the more it spreads. But this center area stays black, no matter what. And it's very difficult to erase. At least compressed charcoal is. And so, getting into a bit of technique, there are charcoal pencils which are held just like a normal pencil, but a lot of the time they come in just these pieces of material, either cylinders or cubes or rectangles. So the best way to hold charcoal is between your first 3 fingers, I guess, your thumb, your index, and your middle finger, and it's just kind of get a good clasp on it. And it'll feel awkward at first, and you can switch it up. Sometimes I like to do like that, which isn't as rigid as that, you know, it's a bit more natural. So whatever feels good, whatever feels natural, whatever you feel like you can flow with. Charcoal is definitely a very flowing material. It's, you know, you draw with charcoal and you draw big lines and you move your arm a lot, so there's definitely a lot of flow with charcoal. It's very smooth when it's applied to the paper. So it's really just a great material. So the biggest distinctions between charcoal is vine or willow charcoal, which is this, and compressed charcoal. And the compressed charcoal is usually in rectangle shapes, cube shapes, whereas the uncompressed charcoal is in these cylinder shapes, which isn't a perfect cylinder because I've used it a long time, but you can kind of get the idea. So compressed charcoal and uncompressed charcoal, the distinction is as it sounds. Uncompressed charcoal has no binding agent, so there's nothing that keeps the charcoal on the page. So you can move it around as much as you want, and you can rub it to the point where you lose all of these hard edges, and it's just pure value. As opposed to compressed charcoal, no matter how much you rub it, you're still going to have those distinct lines, or whatever marks you make. So compressed charcoal has no binding agent, which means it's very easy to move around the page, but it also means that any kind of touch will affect it. It will smudge, it will move unless sprayed with an additive or a fixative, which binds the material to the page. Compressed charcoal is compressed with some sort of material. Most of the time it's wax, and so that's a binding agent, so that gets the stuff to stick to the page. Compressed charcoal usually comes in different weights. There's lightweight, which is the easiest to move around the page. It has the least amount of binding agent in it, and it goes from light, medium to hard, and then there's extra hard. So hard charcoals, they're the more difficult to move around the page. They have the most binding agent in them. So they're really great for adding really, really dark values to your piece. You're not going to get, you know, blacks any other way. But you definitely got to be careful with it. You know, you don't want to make any planning lines or any contour lines or any lines you don't want in the piece with hard compressed charcoal, because you won't be able to erase them at all. So what I like to tell students is vine and willow charcoal is great for planning, and compressed charcoal is great for adding those dark values. That's really the biggest distinction. It's getting dark values and being able to rub it away. So I'll just show you a bit more technique. I'll move over to the other side so that it's easier to move around the page. But the biggest thing with charcoal is that you want to move your body as much as you can when you draw with it. So for example, if I want to draw a straight line, I'm going to take my charcoal and I'm going to just move in this motion, and I'm moving my arm as much as possible, but also moving my body into it. This is how you're going to get the best lines and the best shapes. So I know they're not perfect and they're not straight, but if you do that a couple times before drawing your straight line, eventually you'll get to a pretty straight line, as opposed to trying to draw with your wrist, where it's very impossible to just get it not looking wavy and not looking shaky. And the same concept goes for drawing shapes. So obviously if you're drawing a square, you want those quick figurative lines, and that's nowhere near perfect. But if you practice those kind of drawing lines in that fashion, this would be a lot better than something that's like that. And the same goes for circles. When you draw circles, you want to move your whole arm, focus on bending your elbow joint, and that's how you get just the most perfect circles. And this is another point where I like to express the difference between vine and willow charcoal. This is great because this is willow charcoal. This is great because you can rub away any lines you don't want, and you can be left with the shape, and then you can go over that shape in a compressed charcoal, and it's just a better circle. Now that's not perfect. I can see there's a bit of a corner there and a bit of a corner there. But the idea is that if you practice enough, especially before you start drawing, if you practice just these motions, when you do go to draw the circle, it'll be, or the square or the line or whatever it is, it'll just get better and better and better. And you know, for just drawing standing up, hardly even looking at it, those aren't bad circles. So you can really do a lot once you get the kind of movements, and it's a smooth material. It just glides like butter around the page, and it's great for big kind of gestural shapes. A lot of people do drawings of dancers or drawings of movement with charcoal because you can manipulate it so easily once it's on the page, and you can also just glide with it, whereas graphite is good for that kind of minute shading. So thank you for watching this video demo. I know it was a bit of a long video, but I'm happy to have y'all. I'm happy to see where this lesson goes and how it's interpreted for different classrooms, and thank you for watching.